Next up, we have Rajal Pitroda, I hope I'm saying your name right, who's an entrepreneur and author with a passion for combining story and telling to engage in math and science. And she's going to be speaking on the topic. I think we're hearing a lot about different populations and engagement with games, talking specifically about girls, I think. While we're waiting, I suppose, does anyone have a question for Lindsay or Benjamin? While we're waiting for
That's the only thing that the game I didn't do.
Beautiful. That's how I'm putting it now.
Oh, thank you very much. It's free.
Yeah.
So I know this may be a bit of a strange image with which to start a talk on gender and gaming, but the reason that it's up here is it's actually from the very first game that I ever played. I have an older brother, and much to my now horror, this is what he introduced me to when I was 10. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's an image from a game called Leisure Suit Larry about Larry Laffer, who was the original 40-year-old virgin. So Larry went around trying to seduce women. He was often unsuccessful, but that was not from a lack of trying. So I spent many days of my youth trying to help Larry get laid until, I know, it's still pretty traumatic, until I met Carmen Sandiego. So yeah, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego kind of rocked my world and taught me everything I know about world geography, probably to this day. I was my 5th grade class geography champion, something I've been told not to brag too much about, but there you have it. So perhaps it was because of my love of Carmen, but throughout my career, which has not actually been in the games industry, I've kind of come back to this idea about creating a game and one that teaches something. So I'm currently working on an adventure story about a kid who's on a quest to find an old family heirloom, and in the process, she has to solve a bunch of logic and problem-solving based puzzles. So when I mentioned this idea to friends and colleagues, the question that I got was not about the story or the gameplay or even what I was looking at teaching. It was more, well, is this a game for boys or for girls? And interestingly enough, for me, that wasn't anything I thought about because I thought all 10-year-olds hung out at Lefty's Lounge with Larry. And so, yeah, it was kind of puzzling to me. So after doing a little bit of research, I learned that games like Leisure Suit Larry and Carmen Sandiego, they kind of came at a time before there was a real division in games based on gender. We could say that one game is pretty gender neutral, Carmen Sandiego, and this one would obviously be pretty male. But at that point, it was thought that the people that played computer games were mostly boys, and so that's what the market delivered. It wasn't until the mid-1990s with games like Barbie Fashion Designer and Rocket from Purple Moon that we really kicked off what came to be known as the girls' game movement. One of the results of this, however, is that we've kind of successfully created clear divisions between what boys and girls play. So I know that this conversation can sometimes be a little controversial because there are a lot of people that think we shouldn't be doing this and kids all play the same and we shouldn't be segmenting based on gender, and I don't disagree with that. There are other people that say this is just simple market segmentation and every industry does this. I'm not really interested for the purposes of this talk on, should we or shouldn't we, but what I was really interested in is what girls actually thought of this. So did they see a division in the market, and if so, what did that mean to them? So I went out and I interviewed over 100 kids, both in the US and the UK. I currently live in London, and I talked to them about what games they play, what they think of the games they play, and how they think games are marketed to them, along with a bunch of other things. I had them create their own games or characters at the end of each session, and I'll show you some of what they created. So here are some of the games that came up multiple times when girls were asked what they liked to play. I ran some focus groups that were co-ed and some that were all girls, and in the ones that were co-ed, games like Star Doll and Cooking Mama got a lot less airtime than things like Call of Duty and Left 4 Dead, which I will get to. Girls said they like zombie games, shooting games, fashion games, games where they create their own character, and they love multiplayer games, and they loved playing against people they didn't know. The girls I spoke with did actually see a huge division based on gender. It came up in one focus group like this, and I've got an audio clip.
You know when they design boys' games and girls' games, if you type in, like, sometimes I go to type in girls' games, and then it comes up with about, say, 10 different pages of them, but you click on, like, each one and keep scrolling down to load them, and they're all to do the same thing. You think, no, this is the same game, I've just been on this one. No, this one's not that different to it. And then one day I thought, right, I'm going to type in boys' games and then see what it comes up with. Typed on loads, and there was thousands of different things. Shooting games, cars, action figures, Simpsons, there was loads of stuff.
So I love her accent, by the way. A lot of the clips that I'm going to play are little British girls. But the other girls agreed, saying that since they've been young, they've noticed this clear division where games for girls were focused on fashion, makeup, and cooking. One girl even said that this was probably because game makers could make more money by segmenting the market the way that they have. The big point that the girls kept making was that they kept saying that they didn't think this was fair. That came up a lot. All of the interesting, diverse content that was out there was clearly not marketed to them, and so they didn't feel it was created for them. One of the girls even went so far as to say that she didn't feel like shooting at things should only be for boys. The point they kept making was, why is driving cars, having adventures, rescuing people, and yes, shooting at things, only things boys can and want to do? They were also very quick to point out that a lot of these games that they saw on the market objectified women. And now that might be obvious to you and I, but to hear that from a room full of 12-year-olds on their own was very powerful in a very different way. They told me that guys' games always have one really hot girl as his sidekick or conquest. Women are never main characters, and what girl wants to play a game like that? Here's a girl talking about what she goes through when she has to choose armor for a character in a game she plays.
You can choose between like boy and girl, but the armor choices for girls is ridiculous. I mean, there's so much cleavage and skin everywhere. I just prefer to look at something that could actually be armor instead of a bit of metal on some skin.
So they felt like they were basically picking bikinis made of armor. To them, women were very much props instead of fully realized characters. A lot of the girls on the older side, the ones that were 15 or 16, also mentioned that most of the women in the games that they saw were white, and that a lot of the relationships were between a man and a woman. Again, this is, I think, pretty astute from a group of teenagers, but they didn't feel this really reflected who they were or what they saw around them. One of the consequences of this, and this actually really surprised me, is that a lot of girls said they didn't know if they'd actually want to play a game with a female main character. And this was simply because they haven't seen anything out there that they actually like, where the character isn't stereotyped or objectified. So in a way, they said they're craving content that speaks to them, but they seem really distrustful that the industry is going to be able to deliver it. So I have a host of other kind of insights and comments and clips, but in the interest of time, I kind of want to get to what a lot of every focus group kind of came down to. And the girls that I spoke with expressed the struggle, this kind of conflict, this feeling of having to make a choice at a very early age that they feel will define who they are and how their peers relate to them. And that's having to choose, as one girl put it, between dress up and guns. So they mentioned that they see this as something that's present in a lot of different areas in their lives, but with games it felt very black and white. Are they a girly girl or a tomboy, a gamer or a faker, a princess or a geek? And girls felt pressure to be one or the other, otherwise they felt like there was nowhere for them to fit in. The hard part, though, was that with each choice, there came a cost. So what they told me is that if a girl plays a game that's deemed as girly, she hides it from her friends, oftentimes her female friends, but definitely her male friends, because she feels like it makes her uninteresting, or as one girl said, silly, for liking makeup and fashion. So rejecting this kind of girly culture gives them less choice in what they do, but it also forces them to kind of hide who they are. On the flip side, if they choose the alternative, they aren't believed. So girls tell me that if they if they talked about games that were seen as male, they were called fakers. So one girl said, when I tell boys I play Call of Duty, they're really surprised and they don't believe me. Or if you say you play FIFA, a boy thinks that you want their attention, not that you're really interested in playing it. So by segmenting the market like we have, we're telling them that they have to be one thing or the other, that all things that are pink and girly and what that symbolizes, it's the opposite of kind of what they see as this varied and really rich male-driven content. So there's no way for these girls to kind of be authentic to what they're drawn to and enjoy and feel like it's an accepted choice. So in having to make this choice too, girls limit how they see themselves, but also how their peers see them. So here's a clip I really love.
I've got like a headset for it so you can talk to them and stuff. And when I talk to them, yeah, at the end of the game, I don't talk a lot during the games, but by the end of it, yeah, I normally make friends with them, and then I tell them, they say, oh, you're a really good player, and then I say to them, I know, but you just got bit by a girl.
So these girls spoke as if they really needed to get a sense of trust back from the games that they play. They need to know that there's content out there that speaks to them and kind of offers them the variety that they want, and that shows them that they can like, pink and cooking and makeup, but they can also like zombies and cars and guns, and that those games aren't targeted specifically to boys, and that girls aren't alienated from that. So these girls really want to be integrated into the existing world and not segmented out of it. And for them, they feel like that's a world with choices to express themselves, and one that's created for people and not stereotypes. So that's it. Thanks.